Apple savings account interest rates, and Apple shares buybacks. This is MacVoices. Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Backblaze. MacVoices listeners get a fully featured no-risk free trial at backblaze.com/MacVoices. Okay, so another thing, there seemed to be a lot of Apple-specific news in the last few days. The Apple Card savings account its interest rate is decreasing from 4.5 down to 4.4%.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that, but not surprised. I mean, the rates are fluctuating. I mean, Brian could obviously have more of a view on this in the economic side of things, but I was kind of exploring that because, ironically, Mac Rumors did post an article a couple hours before talking about how great the rate is, and showing a whole grid of all other banks that are pretty comparative to that, and then all of a sudden you got 4.4% a few hours later. So that's like anything with banking. It's unpredictable, but still, I mean, 4.4%, you can't nothing to sneeze at when it comes to a savings account. I mean, I've got a good amount sitting in a savings account and got a nice interest payment this as of yesterday, you still can't complain. I mean, with all the discussion and rumors of what's happening with Apple and Goldman Sachs, I mean, they're still obviously holding tight.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was at 4.25%, and it got raised up to 4.5. So, the fact that it dropped a 0.1 percentage point, I don't think is time to panic and, I'm going to take everything out and put it in my 3.5% account that I have at my bank. No.
Well, that's a really good point. The article David was talking about, because I saw it too, Dave, Apple was sort of in the middle of the pack, but when you got to the really high, the higher rates, they had all kind of minimum balances.
Yeah, and other restrictions. Yeah,
yeah, all kind and
UTS and CIT was the two I looked at from that article, and you got all kinds of restrictions. It's crazy.
Yeah, so the Apple thing is just pretty much in and out. I know they say it can take up to 5 days to get your money out.
I haven't had that experience.
No, it's been quick.
I've never waited more than a day. Yeah. Which, frankly, is sometimes better than my actual bank.
Yeah, so, exactly.
And also, don't take financial advice from any of us folks. But
no, take it from me, Mr. Mike Man. Yeah, do that.
At least you admit it.
Yeah.
Invest in Mike futures. That's where the real money is.
Microphone futures.
Yeah, but if you pay any attention, if you've been watching CD rates from your local bank, you're seeing that the ones that the farther out you go, the lower they are going. So there's this trend here that I think the administration's projections on that they are not raising interest rates and they're going to probably be lowering them. The bankers are starting to believe that and take that into account. So it is what it is. Marty?
Yeah, that is my savings account for my technology slush fund. My wife never gets to see it. It's there on my Apple Card. And
nice.
That's where all of my device investments come from. But my question for the group, I don't want to put it all on Brian, but is this going to help them in maneuvering, finding a new parent? Since Goldman Sachs wants to close on this deal that they have?
I was thinking about that. Goldman Sachs, separate from the Apple account, you can open up, savings accounts with. They operate under the Marcus name, and it's almost identical as far as the interest rate. So I was thinking about that too, because they had a line there at the bottom saying that of that article mentioning, we're rumored to have Goldman Sachs go away as the Apple supplied partner for savings accounts and their credit cards. So that's a great question. There was a couple of comments, I think, when that came out. I think it was in November when I clicked on the link for that, when it was talking about, the spinoff that would take place in the next 12 to 15 months. And I remember a couple of brands of cards being mentioned there at the time in banks, but I haven't really heard much since. So I don't know.
So
Yeah,
when you
I had
said-
heard Chase and Morgan Stanley were people they were playing with.
Yeah, but we also heard that there might not be any interest with them.
And speaking of interest, Chase doesn't offer very much interest. So
Well, that
it'll
too.
be whichever new suitor comes to them, it'll, if it's not one of the ones that pays the higher interest, I don't know.
So as soon as you said Marcus and Goldman Sachs, I put that into Google, and a special promotional CD term came up. A 14-month CD term, 5.00 APY. Now, listen carefully to this. Special offer. Boost your savings with a special rate on our high interest yield CD. Lock in a fixed rate for a 14-month term with a guaranteed return on your money. APY may change before the account is open and funded. Promotional term expires 4/17/24. So wait a minute. The big number says 5.0, but it may change before I send them my money to lock it in?
I think it's just for the maybe the transaction time. So if you like open an account and it's just maybe they're if they have any technical glitches on their end or anything of that nature, I think it's just more just safeguarding themselves that the market can fluctuate a little bit. But that's essentially the rate. I actually myself I did lock into that rate too.
Yeah, I mean, because a 5.5, it's not a lot different than a 4.5 with the Apple Savings account or some of the others. But
Well, and especially over a 14-month period. And again, it depends on if you're going to drop, 10,000 on it, you're not going to see that much of a difference as far as your rate of return goes. But if you're talking about, 250,000 or something like that, okay, well, now you're talking maybe real money. But again, you put it in something like that, and there's a reason why they say locked in, because that's exactly what it is. It's locked in.
Yeah, I think you sacrifice the interest over. I have to read the terms, but the interest over a certain period of time if you pull out early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
I was just waiting for that from Guy.
yeah, this is one of those things again. What is it? You have to click through what is the 10-day CD rate guarantee? And even that sounds like it could shift out from under you, which is the part that I really don't like. Yeah. So, for what it's worth, check it out if you're interested. Okay, so sort of related to that, and this was something Mark Fuccio brought up last week when we were discussing the DOJ's action against Apple. But this is a really good article about the fact that the DOJ apparently is trying to argue that Apple's shares buyback, or the buybacks that Apple does, are evidence of their monopolistic position, that they have no competitors.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
The perplexed look on your face, Chuck, and yours, Guy. Thank you, because I was trying to parse something out of that argument that I felt I must be missing, because on its surface, this seems just straight up crazy.
It's two completely unrelated things.
I don't know if I really stretch, I can say, okay, Apple's made so much money that they're stuffing it in the mattress and they have nothing else to do with it, so they're just going to buy back some shares.
So how is that a monopoly problem?
Only, again, Jeff, I'm really trying to stretch. I'm trying to get in the head of someone who
I get
think
it.
like
It's
I
just like
there's
there's a straight up logic disconnect with the DOJ's argument. Well, on so many levels in this case, but with this in particular, I'm like, I cannot find how this hooks together to be a legit argument.
The comparison I've seen in other articles is saying, well, this company has this amount of profit and stock buyback versus what they're putting into R&D. And Apple's is so low proportionate to Google or Microsoft or whatever That's where the problem is. So they're trying to stir up controversy by showing differences that have no meaning within the context of what the company does.
Oh, now it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense.
Well, so if that's the case, Marty, how does share buyback versus the amount of money you're spending on R&D have anything to do with anything?
It doesn't. But when you put it up against other big players, they have a better ratio of investment in R&D.
Or they have a different ratio, not a better.
Yeah. That's just a decision that the company's making in terms of how they're going to spend their money or give their money back to shareholders. It has really no relevance between Apple or any other companies, but they're putting it up there so it looks like it's a false unequivalency, I guess.
I would be interested to see other mature companies that have been around for a little while, what their ratios are. Because I think when a company is a lot newer and they're developing these, completely ground up new products, I would imagine that their R&D is going to be at a higher percentage, compared to their, whether it's stock buyback or total revenues or things of that nature. Apple is, for obviously the Vision Pro, very, very new area of Apple, but some of their other products are, incremental improvements.
I mean, I think the entire argument is basically if they didn't do stock buybacks, they could spend the money on a stupid idea like, making an Apple
car,
Android phones, and it that still doesn't make any sense. And the whole argument that Apple isn't spending enough on R&D after they just got through spending, for 10 years, massive amounts of money on a car that they aren't going to make,
allegedly.
I mean, all that technology is going to get used again, or the amount of money they spent on the Apple Vision Pro. And we're going to start seeing that showing up all over the place, or the amount of money that they've spent on machine learning and large language models and the new definition of AI. I think we'll start seeing that too.
So you brought up something interesting, Eric, that I hadn't really thought about. And again, this is really, really stretching that. Okay, if they hadn't spent the money on share buybacks, they could have made Android compatible chat, or they could be making things that made some of the cross-platform parts better. I mean, again,
they could do that anyway.
Yes, but a company is supposed to be, first of all, there's supposed to be an obligation to its shareholders to run it responsibly. But they're in it to make money and not to support every Tom, Dick, and Harry who says they have a platform and want to be part of it.
Chuck, you're touching on a concern that I'm having with lawsuits and regulations we're seeing imposed on a lot of these larger companies, and where I fear this will take us. And not like today, but long term, is down a road where the governments have legislated out so much of what these companies are allowed to do and how they're allowed to run their businesses. Because really what we're seeing right here is the DOJ using the threat of a monopoly lawsuit or monopoly sanctions to dictate to Apple how they run their business and how they create their products. So project that out because this is happening not just with Apple. And we end up in a world where there's no value in any of these companies innovating because the rules of what they make and how they make it have been dictated by the governments. So it's basically just like you get the government approved phone and everyone has the same phone. Doesn't matter who made it.
Right.
And then everyone has the same computer. And and or whatever the thing is that that they're focusing on. But the ultimate outcome of this sort of action on the parts of major governments, to me, is very concerning. I just don't see it playing out in a way that serves the public, that or serves the companies.
Yeah, well, I mean, none of these, the vast majority of people that are writing these regulations, and I'm talking about the House and the Senate, they have no idea how tech works. They're basically, I don't know how far down this rat hole I want to go.
This MacVoices is supported by Backblaze. MacVoices viewers and listeners get a fully featured, no-risk free trial at backblaze.com/MacVoices. Go right now and find out how easy it is to protect yourself from nasty little surprises. When you were in school, the worst excuse in the world was that the dog ate your homework. Now, you're in business. Maybe for yourself, maybe as part of a larger organization. Or maybe you're still in school. Regardless, the new worst excuse in the world is that you don't have a backup. That's where Backblaze comes in. If you're backing up with Backblaze, you don't need to worry about losing your work to the dog, a data breach, a hack, or even simple drive failure. You can always get your data back, either by downloading it using the web app or iOS or Android apps if you need the files fast, or by ordering a hard drive from Backblaze if you need everything back at once. With file retention and version history for 1 year, you almost have to try to lose something. If you are in the enterprise market, you can count on features like granular access permissions, advanced single sign-on, group management controls, and compliance support to meet your needs no matter how strict your industry is. There are lots of great details to know about Backblaze. But for now, you need to know one thing: backblaze.com/MacVoices to get a free, no-risk, fully featured trial. In just a few clicks and a few minutes, you will be on your path to a more secure future. No more excuses needed if you visit backblaze.com/MacVoices. There is no excuse for not trying it. Thanks to Backblaze for their support of MacVoices. Technology, we have covered that a lot, but there are times I start to wonder if they understand how business works.
Well, if they did, they wouldn't be in the House or the Senate. They'd be running a business.
Right. I wish I disagreed with that. Brian?
I was just going to comment too, just looking at the article, it mentions there that in fiscal year 23, Apple spent $30 billion on research and development. So whether the ratio is not what they like, from the government's perspective, that's still literally $30 billion. And much larger than the valuation of 1 year, bigger than the vast majority of tech companies, the entire value of those companies, not even counting the revenue that Apple made. $30 billion. You can get a lot for your money for $30 billion of research and development. So
and it really puts into perspective all the people that were wringing their hands over $10 billion that they allegedly spent on the Apple car over 10 years. When they, $10 billion over 10 years, $1 billion is a lot of money. But when Apple goes ahead and spends $30 billion in a single year for research and development for all of the rest of the products that they sell, it puts it in perspective. It's like it's $10 billion over the course of 10 years on a single project. Even if the project itself doesn't come through, it's not that big of a deal for a company the size of Apple or Google or Microsoft or any of the large tech giants.
Yeah. Okay, just for fun, because I love just looking stuff up while we're doing all this.
Yeah.
30 billion's a lot of money. And I thought, what countries is that more than their GDP?
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, I'm looking at worldometers.info, and you have to go down to the 100th spot on the list to get down to below 31 billion. So Papua New Guinea, Apple spent just on R&D the GDP of Papua New Guinea. and then like below Papua New Guinea, which is where you drop below 30 billion. You have countries like Cambodia, Zambia, Cyprus, Trinidad and Tobago, Iceland, Senegal, Georgia. Anyhow, there's Chad, their GDP
And
is
Jeff.
12.7 billion. Chad and Jeff, yeah.
And it
And-
also, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Well, it also puts, I think it's something that we've talked about before, that when we see these things come out from iFixit that says, the Vision Pro costs, $5.98 to make. It's like, yeah, okay, you're doing parts, but you're not talking about any of this R&D. And, so Apple spent $30 billion in 1 year. It's spread out among a bunch of products, not just the ones that we know about, not just the Vision Pro, but ones we don't know about. I mean, it's a completely false flag. Eric, I want to get you in.
Yeah. So, there's all this discussion about what things can they do to Apple to get them to produce more products, and how Apple is supposedly preventing other companies from building technology products. There is a much older solution to that problem, and that is to look at what is Apple making in profits and tax it. Slap a big, huge, massive tax on profits, and then use those taxes to do technology grants to companies to try to incubate new ideas, or to encourage somebody to take a risk, or build more companies, or give more companies the ability to start up and try something. And that also would reduce the amount of money going to stock buybacks. It would encourage perhaps Apple to try in investing in additional ideas, because if the money's just going to get taxed if you don't use it, well, then maybe you might as well use it. Reduce the amount of just extra money sitting around.
Eric, that sounds like that leads us down the road to Jeff's concept of, just everything being basically the same, because you're taking in this case Apple's ability to have that money and to spend that money on R&D to make better products.
Well, you don't have to tax 100% of the profits. That's what they used to do. At a certain point, 100% of the profits get taxed, and there's no reason to go to that extreme. But you certainly can increase the tax rate and pull some of that money back to do targeted investment in areas that you think are weak. If you're thinking that Apple is taking over too much of the technology and is not doing some of these other things, then why are you expecting Apple to then all of a sudden start doing it when it's not in their best interests? You make resources available to let somebody else do it, and then build up another company that's able to have good ideas. Apple occasionally goes out and buys companies here and there as needed. Get some more companies started, give them enough money to try some ideas and take a chance.
So I've been unfortunately ignoring the chat room. I'm so sorry, chat room. So on the whole issue of stock buybacks and R&D, Cletus said apples and oranges, shotgun accusations. It's so IBM and Microsoft. Webb says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
I feel better already.
Yeah. And then, Eric, I think this was intended for you, but Webb says, did you really suggest raising taxes on Apple? So.
And I'd have to say, if it's the difference between somebody going in and saying, we're not going to let you do security anymore, or we're going to break your company up, I don't want to see that. I'm willing to volunteer to tax Apple more heavily if it means that they can stay together as a company and have the same sort of security level that they've got now. Apple might not see it that way.
Gee, I'd be surprised. Marty?
Funniest part of the article for me, and actually a part that really rang true, it kind of took me down memory lane, the last paragraph or second to the last paragraph in the article. Contrast this to Google, which invests in anything and everything and then closes the stuff down that doesn't work out. Google Cardboard, goggles, clips, domains, podcast, optimized Stadia, Hangouts, Talk, Wave, Duo, Plus, Spaces, Now, Buzz, Currents, Surveys, Latitude, Labs. It goes on. And I got to tell you, there are a lot on that list that I jumped into and then they disappeared. At least the stuff that Apple puts out seems to hang around. I mean, with the exception of the car, however, we're getting a lot of AI technology that's coming out of that investment, and that'll show up in a different way.
Except that was never actually released or actually confirmed.
Right.
So it's not the same thing as what with Google releasing a bunch of services going,
Right.
come on and try this stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to be totally free, but we get lots of information out of it. Oh, we're not getting as much as we thought we were going to. So no, you can't have it anymore. Gone.
And, we love to bring up the car, but how many projects do we hear about literally years, occasionally decades later, that this was being thought about, that this was considered, that this was something that was being examined or started to be developed and then got abandoned? The car was such a high-profile thing for all the reasons that you can all name. But there are plenty of projects that never see the light of day that eventually contribute to something, or maybe they don't contribute to anything. But the only way you find out what may or may not work is to start down that road.
I mean, Apple had plenty of history of products that failed before all this continued success. I mean, you look at the Newton. Newton was a great product, but it only lasted a few years and it kind of disappeared. I mean, there's plenty of products that Apple has released over the years that failed miserably, and others have flourished. Obviously, people are looking at the success of the iPhone, the success of the iPad. Those were their top products. Then the Mac is now gone like gangbusters. So why now? Because Apple's so successful, they're thinking that this is a monopolistic thing that they're doing. That doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous, even on the face of it. That you have this. It's a duopoly. You have Android and you have iOS. And if you don't want to use iOS, okay, there's a billion different Android phones out there. Some of them very, very good. Some of them with better cameras and whatever it is that floats your boat when it comes to smartphones. So just go take one of those. What is, just leave, and I've said this over and over again, just leave iOS alone. It's not hurting anybody. They're not doing anything to prevent other people from making money on their platform. They have certain rules they expect you to follow. And if you can't abide by those rules, Tim Sweeney, then you just go ahead and just don't release your stupid game on iOS. Yeah, punish people that way. Except that's not what you want. You want your cake and you want to eat it too. You want to have your game on iOS, and you want to have 100% of whatever it is that people spend as far as extras go for that game. And you don't want to pay back into the system that has basically made your game what it is today.
Right.
So go do something to yourself that I can't say on a family-friendly show.
Thank you, Guy, for restraining yourself.
Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's like, no, the beast inside says, go.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.